Hi, Dave Littman, Truth in IT. I'm here with Christoph Bertrand. Christoph is VP of Product Marketing with Arcserve. Christoph, welcome.
Hey, Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and hey, we want to make sure that our audience sleeps well at night. So, Christoph, talk to us about compliance. You know, it's one thing to store data, it's one thing to store emails, but who has to store? Who has to be compliant? Help us understand why this is so important.
Yeah, so compliance really takes different shapes and forms. The first thing is you may have your own rules within your own organization, and you want to comply with your own rules. Maybe your CFO or your CEO or your general counsel wants you to do certain things. But really, when you talk about compliance, you have to think about documents and emails. You have to think about the ability to demonstrate that you have been a good custodian of the data that you have under your control, that you have kept it for a certain period of time, and maybe that you've disposed of it after a certain period of time.
But it's more than that, though, right? It's more than just keeping the data, right? So there's some actual sort of attributes to having a compliant storage system that people have to comply with.
Exactly. You got to prove that you are compliant, right? You can't just say you are. It would be way too easy. You can try, but ultimately somebody's going to ask you to produce some sort of report, demonstrate that you have eliminated and purged certain records that you have, or just have you run some sort of report, again, to demonstrate that you have kept everything that you needed in that email archive of yours that pertains to maybe a contract. I'm thinking here of the defense industry, where the DoD has certain rules where you have to keep all the documents pertaining to a project for a period of time. There are many other types of compliance requirements that apply across the board. In essence, everyone has to comply with something. Typically, it's multiple rules. Luckily, they're not contradicting themselves. It can happen. But any industry, every company, every size of company has to deal with compliance.
So is this compliance, Christoph, mostly a corporate policy, or are there government regulations or educational regulations or Defense Department regulations? Help us understand, whether these compliance issues are internal or external.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, I think there are definitely some internal ones, especially for larger organizations where you have to do things in a certain way, and for all sorts of reasons, you need to manage data in a very specific, with a very specific type of framework in mind. There are new regulations coming up in Europe now, talking about regulations like GDPR, for example, but across the board, just looking even at North America, we have what we call here the Freedom of Information Act, which applies to K1 through 12, local government, federal government, contractors of those government agencies. And essentially it says, well, all electronic communications are public records and must be retained and produced on request by anyone making a request.
Okay. And so, Arcserve has a system for making sure that companies of all types are compliant, and we're going to bring on Mark Johnston in a minute. He's going to run through a demo. And I think that, for some people, understanding compliance is best done through a demo. But for other people, there's a term that sticks out, and you and I were talking about it, and it's a term that's important that people understand, and it's the term called immutability. And so if you can help describe, why that is so important with this sort of a system.
Yeah, so immutability means that, look, to be compliant, obviously you have to respect certain rules. You have to be able to maintain the data in an unaltered fashion for a period of time until it expires. In some cases, typically for legal reasons, you may put that data on legal hold, so it never expires. But that's really the idea. And the idea is that for email in particular, the last thing you want to do is either miss an email that you should have, or after the fact, modify it or delete it, because at that point, then it becomes very hard to determine whether you're compliant or not, and clear you would be in breach, especially if you've started manipulating emails. So really the idea is that you cannot alter what has gone in or gone out of your email archive, and that you have captured everything, and then you manage. Based on the rule. Again, different industries, different sectors will have different rules and different requirements.
Okay, and so what we're going to see in a minute is the system for managing all this, setting up the policies, all the logging. Anything else, Christoph, you want to add before we bring Mark on?
Well, compliance is such a large and vast topic. There are many things you can do. It's a process, it's policies. We talked about, corporate governance, its regulations. It takes a very pragmatic approach, candidly, when you're in the mid-market to manage compliance, and that's what we've decided to do with our UDP offering by providing the email archiving piece of it. That is really the fundamental tool you want to have. Most of your documents are going to be in email. A lot of your interactions today, if not all of them, are going to be in email, especially when you're dealing with contracts or exchanges with customers or users, or if you're a public organization, any citizen that you're dealing with. So the first big rock is email, and that's what we have with our archiving solution, and Mark will show this to you in a minute, but it's very easy to use. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to make very good use of it, and really empower yourself and your organization to meet those compliance requirements.
All right, great. All right, so you ready to bring Mark on? We'll give it a go.
Let's give it a go.
All right, Mark is ready. I'm going to switch over the screen to him. Mark, take it away. Take us on a tour.
Hi, Dave. How you doing? Thanks, guys. So as Christoph mentioned before, I'm going to log into the solution here as one of the pre-configured security roles within the solution. So keep in mind that the solution is managed via browser. As you can see, I'm just using Chrome today. And it can run on-premise or in the cloud as well. So I'm going to log in as auditor. So auditor is a role that basically has the ability to search across all the content in the archive, right, for all users. So let me log in as auditor, right? And right away, you'll see some search tools, right? So as an auditor, I'm going to basically be doing a couple different things, right? I can respond to very, very specific requests or, court orders or whatever for message content information, right? Or maybe it's an HR issue and I'm looking for some very specific verbiage in the email. Mm-hmm. So if I look here, and I hit advanced search, it gives me the ability to enter the information that I'm looking for. So I can search by to and from emails, from topic, and any of these fields here, I can use keywords, I can use Boolean strings, right? I can exclude or include. And keep in mind that we do a full text index of all the content as it's being ingested into the archive, whether that be the message or the attachment, right? So I can search by keywords in an attachment. So maybe I'm looking. Maybe I'm an HR person. I'm looking to see if intellectual property is being sent outside the company or whatever, and I can search specifically on an attachment for some verbiage. We also have the ability to create tags and notes to associate with different message content. So keep in mind as we're ingesting this in and we're associating this metadata, what we're really doing is we're creating a record, right, for every message that's in the archive. It does become a records management solution at that point. So I can associate tags and notes. So if I want to go back later and search by those notes or those tags that I've associated with the content, I can certainly do that. I can do a time or date range for these, and I can include or exclude any of these fields in here that I want, right? So I can get very specific. I can look for email between two individuals, between a certain date range, with a certain attachment with a keyword in that attachment. So it gives me the ability to be very granular around how I search for that information, right? And once I do a search, I can come up with a list of hits right down here, right? If I click here, I can actually see the body of the messages that I've found in my search, right? And I can also pick and choose which ones I either want to download, right, or print. So I could print these out if I want to. I can download one or many If I choose to download many, they'll be downloaded as EML files in a zip file format, and I can take and import those into any other email system for view. So if I want to pull those into a PST file or whatever, or I need to hand those off to my legal counsel, EML files are kind of a universally accepted or universally used message format, right? It's pretty common out there, even more common than PST files are today. And I always have the ability to save my search, right? So I can always go back and search later with the exact same criteria. In fact, if I go over here, maybe I have some saved searches. Yes, I have some searches with some specific content in them. So if I actually clicked on CNN, I could go back and research some message content that I had found previously, right? And so keep in mind that from a user perspective as well, I mean, part of the beauty of the system is that users have the ability to access their own content with the same search tools, or they can search using a plugin applet for Outlook. But this really does give companies a very, very powerful tool to be able to respond to either compliance requests, compliance requirements, or legal requests as well, right? And it also gives them the ability to keep a handle on their content, put very, very specific retention policies and legal holds on the content that is in the archive. So, for example, if I choose to change retention policies for users within my organization, I can certainly do that. It can be very granular. And again, if you're using this for legal or compliance reasons or whatever, you're always going to want to put content that may be in question on legal hold. And once we put it on legal hold, that will override any retention policies out there, so that information will not disappear due to retention disposition. And then we have an audit log. So everything that happens from the audit perspective is captured in this log. And if you see here, it's very detailed. It shows who logs in, who logs out, messages that are viewed, search descriptions, what was searched, right? And it creates a reference number that we can always go back to and refer to. So it's a fully auditable or a fully immutable audit log, I should say, that can be used in conjunction with turning over the information maybe for a legal issue.
One quick question for you, Mark, is if you come up with a search result and come up with a list of emails, can you flag some of them because for whatever reason they require additional review and make them visible to your colleague, for example?
Yeah, so example, that would be where you'd want to put a tag on there, right? So I could actually just create a tag. So if I was on a team of more than one auditor, let's say I go out and I do a search, I find a list of or a collection of emails that may want to be reviewed further, I could tag those emails and I could create a tag, and then the people on my team could always go out and search by that tag, and we could narrow that search down even more based on the content that's in those tagged messages. Okay. And I can also add notes to those to give maybe people on my team a heads up as to something that I'm seeing in there or what maybe the next steps might be.
Okay. All right, fabulous. Well, really appreciate you guys coming to show us the solution today. Christoph Bertrand, Mark Johnson with Arcserve, thanks very much for taking the time.